If you're planning a new website, one of the first decisions you might be weighing up is whether you should hire a freelancer or should I work with a web design agency. And truly, it depends on the job your website needs to do. A freelancer can be a brilliant choice if the project is small, clear and focused, whereas an agency usually makes more sense when your website needs strategy, design, development, SEO thinking, content support, testing, hosting and ongoing care. So rather than asking which one is better, the better question is which one is the right fit for my business, my budget, and the outcome I need from this website. This can be a confusing decision because on the surface, two website quotes can look like they are offering the same thing. Both might even say website design. Both might mention a home page, service pages, and a contact page. Both might promise a professional looking website. But underneath that, the level of support could be completely different. One quote might be for a simple build where you provide all the content, decide the page structure, supply the images, and sort out hosting or support afterwards. Whereas another quote might include planning, user journey, page structure, design, development, SEO foundations, mobile testing, launch support, hosting, and website care. So when you are comparing a freelancer with an agency, you are not always comparing like for like. That is why this question needs more than just a quick answer. Let's start with freelancers. A freelancer is usually one person offering a very specific skill or a smaller mix of skills. That might be website design, WordPress development, copywriting, SEO support, branding, technical fixes, or website updates. And for the right project, a freelancer can be a great choice. A freelancer may make sense if you have a clear brief, a smaller project, and a tighter budget, and you mainly need one specific skill. For example, maybe you just need a simple first website. Maybe you just need a one-page landing page. Maybe you already have a website and just need a few updates. Or maybe you need help from someone who is brilliant at one particular thing. One of the big benefits with freelance is direct communication. You are often speaking to the person doing the work, which can make the process feel really simple and personal. So if the project is focused, your content is ready, your branding is sorted, and you do not need much ongoing support afterwards, a freelancer could be exactly what you need. The thing to check with a freelancer is not simply whether they are good enough, it is whether their setup matches what you need. So before you go ahead, ask a few clear questions. What parts of the project do they handle themselves? Do they outsource anything? What happens if they're ill, or on holiday, or fully booked? What support is available after launch? Who owns the website? How are future changes handled? These are not awkward questions, they're sensible ones. Because when you work with one person, you're often relying on that one person's availability, process, and skill set. And that can be absolutely fine as long as you know how it works. So the freelance route is usually strongest when the project is clearly defined, the scope is simple, and both sides know exactly what is included and expected. Now, let's look at agencies. An agency usually gives you access to a wider team and a more structured process. Instead of one person handling everything, you may have people involved in strategy, design, development, content planning, SEO, project management, hosting, and ongoing support. That becomes useful when the project has more moving parts. For example, if your website needs to generate inquiries, support local SEO, explain several services, build trust, work well on mobile, and be looked after properly after launch, there's more to think about than just the design alone. At FreshOnline, when we plan a website, we're not just thinking, how do we make it look good? We're also thinking, what does the homepage need to say first? Which services need their own pages? What questions does the customer need answered before they inquire? Where should the calls to action go? How does the site work on mobile? What SEO foundations need to be in place? What happens after launch? That broader thinking is often where an agency becomes helpful. This is where people often get caught out. They compare two quotes and think they're comparing like for like. One says £900, one says £3,000. And on the surface, both say website design. So naturally, the cheaper one looks like the obvious choice, but when you look closer, they may not include the same thing at all. One might be a simple build where you need to supply all the content, work out all the page structure, decide where it needs to go and what it needs to do, and also sort out the hosting and support afterwards. The other might include everything I've already mentioned: planning, design, development, SEO, mobile testing, launch support, hosting, and care after the website goes live. Those are completely different projects, and this is why the cheapest option is not always cheaper in the long run. Because if important things are missing, you may end up paying for them later. Or worse, you end up with a website that looks fine but does not generate inquiries, does not explain your services clearly, or becomes difficult to manage after launch. So before you choose based on price, ask what is actually included and what isn't. What will I need to provide? What happens if I need changes later? What happens after the website goes live? That is where the real comparison is. Not just freelance versus agency, but support level versus support level. A simple way to decide is to look at the job your website needs to do. Choose a freelancer if the project is small, clear and focused. You need one skill, maybe your content is ready and your branding is already sorted. Maybe you don't need much ongoing support after launch. That is often a good freelance project. Choose an agency if the website needs to work harder. Maybe you have several services. Maybe you need help shaping the structure. Maybe SEO matters. Maybe you need content support. Maybe the website needs to generate inquiries. Maybe you want a team that can support the site after it goes live. That is often a good agency project. The difference is not really about freelancer versus agency, it's about simple project versus more strategic project. If the website just needs to exist online, you may not need a full agency process. But if the website needs to help people find you, understand you, trust you, and contact you, it usually needs more thought behind it. Before you choose either route, ask some of those questions I mentioned earlier about what's included and what's not, who owns the website, what happens if something breaks, how are future changes handled, is hosting or maintenance included? Good providers will welcome those questions, whether you're speaking to a freelancer or an agency. Clear answers are always a good sign. But if the answers feel vague, slow down before you commit. Because a website project shouldn't feel mysterious. You should understand what you are buying, what you need to provide, and what happens once the site is live. So, is it better to hire a freelancer or a web design agency? As I said, it depends on what you need. A freelancer can be a brilliant option for a smaller, clearly defined website project when you need one main skill, want direct communication, and need to keep the process lean. Whereas an agency can be the better fit when your website needs strategy and structure, continuous thinking, maintenance, care, hosting, and long-term support. Neither option is automatically right or wrong. The best choice is the one that matches the role your website needs to play in your business. If you're still unsure which route makes sense, we have a full guide on how to choose the right website partner. Or you can get in touch with FreshOnline and we can talk through what your website actually needs before you make a decision.